And welcome back once again, everybody, to the Maine State Chamber of Commerce and the Bottom Line, coming to you from the studios of the Williams Broadcasting Group, creative programming for radio, television, and diversified full-length podcasts for the web at williamsbroadcasting.net. The Bottom Line comes your way twice every month, and by the way, when you're listening to us, you can be listening to us live from our studio by going to williamsbroadcasting.net, clicking onto the microphone at the upper right-hand corner of the front page that says Listen Live, and we'll be there. But we want to encourage you to pick us up on demand. Anytime on any app that you normally listen to your favorite podcast on, you can pick up The Bottom Line. You can also go to our website and pick it up, or you can go to the Maine State Chamber website and on their homepage, and you can listen to the show there. And once again, I want to remind you that we are sponsored by Grant's Kennebago Camps on pristine Kennebago Lake and River. I'm John Williams with my co-host Patrick Woodcock, who is the president and CEO of the Maine State Chamber of Commerce. And good morning to you, Patrick. How are you doing?
Doing great as we approach the 250th. Hopefully, you're
Hmm.
feeling a little bit of American spirit as we enter this holiday weekend.
Absolutely. No question about it. And we're very pleased today to welcome Ryan Lowe, who's the Vice Chancellor for Finance and Strategic Artificial uh, Artificial Intelligence, Integration, and Treasurer for the University of Maine System. And Ryan, it is a pleasure to have you join us on the Bottom Line today. It's a great subject to kick off with.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm really looking forward to the conversation.
I'm going to turn things back over to you, Patrick, at this point.
Well, Ryan, we always like to start with just an introduction. You've been a seasoned leader at the university and state government, but would love to, for an introduction for people who have not had the opportunity to work with you, just a little bit of your professional background and what led you to your current role at the university.
Yeah, well, thank you. Thanks for having me. I've got, about a 30-year public sector career now in finance, about half of that in state government and half with the university system. Had a great 15, 16-year career in state government, had an opportunity to work for multiple governors in different parties, and really enjoyed that. Came over to the university system and took over their finances and have been in my current position for about 11 years now. And then, like a lot of people, picked up the AI bug a couple of years ago, really realized the benefits of that within the system. And the trustees and the chancellor kind of expanded my role into the AI space just about a year ago, exactly.
Ryan, I guess I'll ask the question that probably you get asked quite often. What does it mean, to see what has been evolving in the past several years when it comes to artificial intelligence? And there are so many applications associated with it. We probably don't even have enough time to really even list those. But from the perspective of what you see this meaning to people everywhere with everything, it must be quite extraordinary.
Yeah, it is, and I think the pace of change is what kind of makes it even more challenging. I mean, for me, I've been providing back office services first in state government and now at the university system for almost 25 years now. And during that whole window, a constant stream of consultants who will come in and tell you, how you can combine A and B and you'll save C. And I always found that those never materialized. A lot of it because I always feel like we're slightly ahead of the curve when it comes to looking for those back office consolidation opportunities, and sometimes they just don't materialize. Um, these tools are really the first time I've seen a meaningful, substantial benefit from software in the way, just in the way that we process everything behind the scenes, in the way that HR works, in the way that finance works. It impacts everything. And for us, certainly when you think about education, you spend a lot of time talking about the impact of AI in the classroom. And that's really important. It's really difficult, and we're still trying to figure that out. Um, but the back office opportunities for the university system, quite frankly, for anyone out there, exist right now. And so our board, our chancellor, felt really strongly that this is a space that we wanted to go kind of all in on the administrative side, and then we'll figure out the classroom side on the schedule that makes sense for each of our individual campuses in those circumstances. But just the benefits were just too big to set this aside, and and say we're going to figure out it in 2 or 3 years when we figure out the classroom piece or whatever that piece is. And so just so encouraged by that kind of that progress that I see. And it's the kind of stuff that, again, after 30 years gets me super excited to come back into work every week and look for new opportunities, not just to leverage these in the things that I do every day, but to talk to folks, in the university community, outside the university community, about how they can use these tools in the things that they do every day.
There are an incredible number of uh, applications that I want to drill into. But Ryan, just stepping back, you've been an early adopter. Now this is in your job title. Can you give a little bit of your personal journey with this technology? Was there a moment for you that stands out and you said, this is this is going to be transformative, that kind of stands out to you in the last few years?
Yeah, yeah, 100%. So before, a lot of people get shocked at this because I'm on a lot of national groups, a lot of national panels, but I had never used AI before the spring of 2024. So I really have only been using these tools for a couple of years. Chat GPT had been out for about 18 months or so by the time I started exploring these. Um, and I was fascinated. I'm a tech nerd. But the things that AI was doing up until 2024, creating limericks, creating graphics with a lot of text errors and typos. That's not the type of thing that really is conducive to the things that I do between 8 and 5. Am I interested in nerding out after 5? Sure. But I didn't really feel that kind of connection, that it was different than any other tool. That changed for me in March of 2024. I went to hire a new CIO for the university system. And one of the challenges of looking for a CIO in a state like Maine in higher education is it's just really challenging to get folks who are in higher ed who want to come up to Maine. Our salaries are typically half of what they might be somewhere else. Um, and so if you get a pool of like 6 candidates and a couple drop out, then you're just challenged with your pool. And so I looked through my schedule and figured out that I had actually only met with my CIO in person like 2 times in the previous 2, 3 years immediately after COVID. And that relationship worked completely fine. And so I made the initial decision that I was going to at least consider remote applications for the CIO, that I might consider someone who lives in Georgia but wants to fly to Maine for board meetings. Um, and so I did that, and it worked exactly like I thought. I attracted 85 candidates, the most I have ever had, and the most qualified pool by far. Ultimately, we stole the CIO from the Oklahoma Board of Regents at a substantially less salary because now he didn't need to commute from Dallas to Oklahoma City. He could work in Dallas, and he comes to all of our board meetings. And 95% of what we do every day, like this conversation, is on Zoom. And so it didn't matter necessarily where it was. So anyway, that's a long setup of saying, if you've ever been in charge of a search process, one of the key factors is you need to screen for minimum qualifications. And I had 85 obnoxiously long academic CVs and resumes that, every time someone speaks to a person in the hallway, they put it in their resume. And so I needed to go through all of these in a reasonable amount of time, looking for qualifications like management experience and education levels. That would typically be a 2-day process, maybe, to go all the way through that. I did it. I created a custom GPT after I'd watched a YouTube video. Essentially made this GPT an expert on the university's CIO position. And then I just fed in CVs one by one. And it gave me a report that said, Patrick meets the minimum qualifications, and here's how he does. Or John doesn't meet the minimum qualifications, and here's exactly why he didn't. It took, again, a 2-day process and turned it into about 2 hours. I recreated that process at a Bangor chamber meeting where I did it in about 20 seconds. And from that day forward, I was hooked. And so I started on that day. I get up at 4 every morning. I've got a whole kennel, it feels like, of dogs at our house. They get up really early. And so I used to just get up early, have my coffee, maybe go back to bed. Starting in March of 24, changed my whole routine so that, we feed the dogs. We fed them this morning at almost exactly 4 o'clock. Went back, grabbed my coffee, sat on the couch up in our bedroom suite area, and I watch a couple of hours of YouTube videos on what has happened in AI since yesterday. And I do that for at least 2 hours before I start every day. I typically do it at the end of the day. And have essentially, I feel like I made myself an expert in this space just using YouTube. And I found that one nugget that saved me more than a day. And then ever since that day, it's just compounding on that. Everything I do all day long, can I leverage AI to make the process, more efficient? Preparing for this conversation, preparing for my meeting after this, just fabulous ways to use AI to really kind of really improve the way I manage my calendar, my day, my mail, everything.
Ryan, you talk about consolidation, and you can hear that in reference to how you're talking about hiring processes and so on and so forth. What has it been like to sort of get that integration across to people who are still hesitant when it comes to, getting involved with AI? I think you know what I'm asking you, because that's one of the things that I run into in the chamber business and in my broadcast business as well. Talk a little bit about, what are some of the key things you say that reference the benefits right off the bat from being able to access and apply this when it comes to what it is that you're doing?
Yeah. So love this question. One of the things that I've figured out quickly in this space, in this AI space, is that the limitation is really your imagination. I find rarely do I ask AI something where it doesn't have kind of the response that I'm looking for. And so what I found is when I go out and I have these conversations, whether they're internal to the university or they're external, what people want is they want to see the technology in action, and they want it to be relevant. You can't teach AI from a slide deck. You can't teach it from a 6-month-old stale training video. Everything that we do across the system, every conversation I have in the AI space is live. So if I go down to Maine Law and I'm going to meet with the faculty, for instance, every demo I do that day is going to have a law school flavor to it. When I'm at the Maine Business School, that will be the case. We did a 6-week cohort for small businesses, and all of my demos immediately pivoted over to the type of exercises that you might do in a small to medium sized business. And so I think showing the tools and doing it in a way that people can relate and understand and say, oh, that's something that I do in my job. I can see that benefit. And so, I try to use real world demos, and then I try to give people something that, they can walk away that day and leverage those tools. Not that you have to go be like Ryan and study on, YouTube or somewhere else for 6 months, and then I'll be able to figure this out. But, give me the exercises that I can use these tools tomorrow at my office or at my job.
Right, let's drill down on how you started this conversation on just its utilization for the university. You know, a lot of the listeners know the university, think immediately about the education, the athletics, how it's a research institution. It- you're really managing the finances and speaking to what consultants have been attempting to accomplish previously, that these tools are able to more effectively, if I interpreted your point, than hiring an entire firm. Are there some examples that come to mind on how this has been useful for the university and finite resources?
Yeah, yeah. So let me build on almost the example that kind of you were talking about. And these are the type of things that come up all day long, all week long. Um, so we have an annual budget process. Our trustees approve our budget in May, and as we work through that process this year, the trustees had lots of questions about the condition of our residence halls. We've been very transparent about our infrastructure challenges and the need for investment in our infrastructure, and have been making some pretty good progress on that pace on that challenge. Our trustees during the budget conversation asked us for a full kind of summary, a kind of a state of residence hall type report, if you will, about the condition of our dorms, our plans for investments over the next 5 years, our plans for enrollment in those facilities. So, if this is 2014 and I get that same request, I know exactly how I handle it. I pick up the call, I pick up the phone, and I reach out to a company like Huron, and we fly all of their executives into Maine at our cost, and then we sit around the table and give them all of our data. And then they disappear for a while, and then they come back with a report, and we make some edits. And several weeks after that, we get a final version of that report. I think there's still a role for consultants, so this isn't an anti-consultant comment, but it's a perfect example where we didn't need a bunch of executives. We just really needed to understand the data that we already had. The great thing about higher ed is we've got lots of data. And so I sat down with my team and said, if we were going to do this, if we were Huron in 2014, what would we need for this project? Well, we would need the current conditions of all of our residence halls. We have that. We do a Gordian report every year for that. We'd want to know what our enrollment numbers look like for the next 5 years so that we could understand capacity. You might think that we would probably want our 1 year and 5 year capital plans so that we can see how much we're planning to invest in those residence halls, or notice that we're not investing enough. And so really just sat down with my team and had that conversation. If we were going to put this together, what would we need? And so as we were having that conversation, I happened to read a press release where the housing, the former state planning office had put out a report about housing in Maine. Well, that would be great to add to it. And so essentially what we did was we just created a giant bowl of stew, threw it all into an AI, gave it a really sophisticated prompt to extract out the information that we wanted. Maybe we even fed it a housing report that a consulting firm had put together for us or another university in the past. And we were able to generate a really detailed, really specific report that we could provide the trustees about the state of our residence halls. We were able to put that together. We'll be talking about it with our finance committee this fall. So we were able to put that together in about 2 months, and we spent exactly $0 on that effort. That would have easily been a 6-figure consulting contract that we would have entered into. So that's one example, but there are millions. Like, I do a variance report for my board 4 times a year. Now, that's a process that used to take 2 to 3 days that is now an hour in preparation, for instance.
Patrick and Ryan, let's take a real quick break. We've just been rolling through this first part of the interview. It's been fascinating, and I'm sure we've got plenty more questions to ask you, Ryan, but we're going to take a little bit of a break and come right back. I'm John Williams for Patrick Woodcock with our special guest, Ryan Lowe, the Vice Chancellor for Finance and Strategic Artificial Intelligence, Integration and Treasury at the University of Maine System. Hold on, everybody. We are coming right back. I've been traveling north from Norway to Grant's Kennebago camps on the crystal clear waters of Kennebago Lake near Rangeley for over 50 years, and it won't be long before I'm headed back fly fishing for native brook trout, brown trout, and salmon in one of the most pristine settings anywhere in North America. And what always stands out to me is the stunning beauty of this area, filled with wildlife like moose grazing in the Norton Brook area, easily seen from Grant's dining room, in the main lodge on the shores of the lake, along with haunting and beautiful calls of the loons as they cruise by the camps day and night. And if fly fishing isn't for you, then paddle a canoe or kayak, take a refreshing swim, or walk the miles of hiking trails, or even ride your mountain bike on the camp road next to the lake and river. In the meantime, you'll enjoy 3 home-cooked meals a day and stay in cabins that sit on the water's edge with screened-in porches where you can relax and enjoy the breathtaking natural beauty of the lake and the mountains around it. Owner John Blunt, along with granddaughters Madison and Courtney, are always there to greet you in the fishing on either the lake or in the river. It is simply legendary. So take it from me, a family trip to Grants will change your whole perspective of what an adventure vacation can mean. Go to grantscamps.com for all the information and reservations, and it's very likely that you'll see me there. And we are back once again. Welcome to the bottom line, everybody. It's John Williams. It's Patrick Woodcock, President and CEO of the Maine State Chamber of Commerce, with our very special guest today, Ryan Lowe, the Vice Chancellor for Finance and Strategic Artificial Intelligence Integration and Treasurer, University of Maine System. And Patrick, I'll turn things right back over to you again.
I do want to drill down into how the university is integrating it, but also how we can support businesses to start their own uh, journey of integrating these tools. But I do want to drill down on one element that you've raised a couple times now, and that is the importance of, I think you used the term, feeding the data into the AI agent. And can you explain that importance? Because I think it really does reveal uh, the efficiencies and but also the limitations of AI if it doesn't have those that data set available to it.
Yeah, great question. So, I mean, one of the interesting things that's kind of this evolution of AI over the last 2 years is that more and more as these machines have gotten smarter and their ability to digest information has kind of gotten bigger. What's become really critically important is kind of what's referred to as context in the AI space, and so back to my housing example, again, it's rather than just saying, develop a residence hall report for the University of Maine System and relying on AI to figure out what all of our residence halls are and what the condition might be and so on. We feed it again a lot of that data that we already have in hand, and so again, we've got really good, 1 and 5 year capital plans. We've got really good conditions of our facilities, but it's like good data in like 10 different places. And the great thing about AI is that you can pull all of those sources together, either literally attaching them to a chat, or the way a lot of these tools, Claude Code, Claude Cowork, Chat GPT Codex, even giving it access to files and folders that you have on your desktop, which has really been a big change in the last couple of months. Where you can imagine if you're a large, even a large or small business out there, and you've got lots of your information in a folder on your desktop. 6 months ago you would have had to attach all of those individual files. If you got a lot of large files, potentially you're going to impact your answer because you're giving the AI almost too much information. Now you just point it to a folder on your desktop that maybe has 10 years worth of financial data, and then you ask it to extract out kind of key findings, key patterns, all of that kind of information. It can be really valuable with the right sets of data.
Right. If you don't mind me following actually up on what Patrick just asked you and what you talked about, uh, the information that you're feeding into AI and so on and so forth. This is going to seem like an odd question, but what is the process of the level of trust when it comes to this technology? I think you know exactly where I'm going with this, and I'm just curious as to how that has been reflective in the way, not so much from your perspective, but the people around you that are depending on this information, and you're telling them that it's going to come from this technology. What is that level of trust and how does it build?
Yeah, so it's a great question, and especially when I speak to finance groups, it's literally the first question I get. How could you possibly trust this? I just asked it yesterday, some really obvious question, and got a really crazy answer. But what I find, especially in the type of work, the type of conversations that we're having here, where we're talking about real specific work data. Um, these tools are really good now, especially again if you attach the data. So I imagine, let's imagine two examples. One where I ask AI to go out and find the financial statements for the University of Maine System and give me an overall summary. Are we trending in a positive or negative direction, whatever that might be? So that's one answer. And then the second answer is where I give it access to the folder that has those 10 financial reports or those 10 system annual reports. And I'm going to feel much more confident about the second version there because, I'm going to know that those are University of Maine reports and it didn't actually grab the University of Minnesota or someone along those lines. And so I always want to be able to attach my data to my requests. And then the second piece, and this feels obvious, but a lot of people don't think about it, is just ask the AI to help you double check the work. And so, as an example, I did a report for the Board of Trustees in May, where I did a 5-year projection of online credit hours for the system out through 2032, for instance, and was really transparent about how I used AI in calculating that. But then when I get to the end and I had this really great report and I was getting ready to do all my double checking, I went back to Claude in this case and said, create a methodology document for me that shows me every number that we included in this report. Tell me exactly where it came from. If you pulled it from one of the files that I attached, tell me exactly where it was, and give me the source. If you generated the number, then tell me where you got the numbers and show me the math. And so that just by asking for that doesn't mean that I automatically trust it. But when I go back to double check and, I've got my widescreen monitor and one half is my document and the other half is my methodology document, it's really easy for me to go back and tie the numbers out. You always want to check your work. I always, even if I feel like I put in the best prompt and I know that, that answer is 100% correct, I'm going to treat it like it's 80% correct. And I'm going to, especially when I'm doing this finance stuff. I've been doing this for 30 something years now. I've had the privilege of working for multiple governors and multiple chancellors. I'm not going to throw away my entire reputation, by being the person that stands up and starts spouting out a bunch of false information. So I'm going to leverage these tools when I think they can really, really help me, but I'm always going to double check the output.
Ryan, there've been headlines about just in the last few months about breakthroughs, mathematical challenges being solved that have been unsolved for decades. At our AI event, Dr. Lon Cardin of Jackson Laboratories said that they had a breakthrough in the last 2 years for the speed of a genomics solution for a specific disease that took a 25-year process and made it into months. He said that he didn't think that he would ever see it in his lifetime, nor his children what they achieved in the last 6 months. But the issue that I have is, Jackson Laboratories is its unique role. They have world-class researchers. At the same time, it can feel a little detached for the small businesses in Maine, for people that are, using technology, but not in a sophisticated way. It feels like this is for big tech. What's your response to that, and how do we get this state's economy, which is based of thousands of small businesses, to utilize these tools in its application that makes sense for them?
Yeah, yeah, good question. So what I really love about these tools is I think they can fit just about anywhere in an organization of any size. And so, we're 5,000 employees strong across the system in 10 different locations. And, we really bought into this notion that, the best use of AI for us will be a foundational knowledge of AI across our entire employee base. That's where we're going to see the biggest bang for the buck. It's not having 10 Ryans across the system who can solve problems. It's knowing that accountant or that enrollment manager or the finance person that works for me, can leverage these tools and do things that are not necessarily obvious to me. There are things that you do in your day, Patrick, that are different than what John would do, and these tools can kind of fill that gap anywhere. And I've had some conversations with some, some one person kind of small businesses, and you can imagine now with these tools, you could be your own finance person, you could be your own marketing person, you could design your website. So there are lots of opportunities for a really small organization where you're going to
Mhm.
have where these tools can even have, even an outsized impact, even over something like at Jackson Lab. And I think it just scales all the way through. Even I've had some conversations with some CEOs of some really large businesses in the States, larger than us. And I talk to them about these kind of opportunities, how they can leverage these tools in their organizations as well. It's why I get so excited. It's not that it's just, here's this tool that's a really good fit for someone that is a CFO of a really large organization. I can sit down and see how these tools can do some really great kind of marketing work as well for a really small organization. And I also think it's important to know because when you talk about this and you come from a finance background and you've had to make difficult budget cuts over your career, it's really easy for people to think that you must be supporting AI because you see opportunities to squeeze us all out of a job. Um, and that is not it at all. I've been here for 16 years and had the opportunity, I guess, to push back on lots of positions. People always are looking for more people to do more things, and we haven't always been able to kind of fund all of those initiatives. Here's an opportunity where if we can get that foundational knowledge out across our entire organization, 5,000 employees, maybe 10% more efficient. That's like adding 500 FTEs to our operations. And so all of the times that people come to me and say, if I just had a couple of more people, here's the things that I could do. Well, we're going to provide you the tools, we'll provide you the training, and let's see if we can close that gap. Maybe we won't close it. It's not like we're never going to hire another person, but I think it does give us some flexibility, especially in those back office functions. I've been doing the back office piece for a long time. Not one time in that 25 or so years has anyone ever asked me to raise their rates that we charge them. And so this is an opportunity again for us to just be a little bit more efficient, kind of on the back office side. The piece I love about this again is that, and I think it's a really great opportunity for Maine that we're small enough that we can get people, on a Zoom. I mean, we've put together a really bare bones training plan at the university system. We've spent really no resources on that. The great thing about Zoom is that it doesn't matter whether there's 30 people or 300 people necessarily on that Zoom. And so I think we can take advantage of technology in a state like Maine, and be able to kind of leverage training in maybe a much easier way than a state like California or Texas would be able to do.
Maybe my final comments as we sort of approach the end of the show, and I'll turn it back over to you, Patrick, in a moment. Is the phrase "time efficiency" comes to mind when it comes to the utilization of AI. I am seeing it. I'm seeing it certainly at my chamber level, regional chamber of commerce level, when it comes to all of the businesses that we have there. 97% of the businesses have less than 10 employees. And the fact is that one of the things that you're, not so much you're up against that, but what you're teaching is that this can increase the time efficiency for businesses that just don't seem to have that. They don't have that. They never have had that. And now they will have that. The other thing that I have found from my perspective as being a creative artist in the broadcast industry and when I'm involved in the church as well, is my ability to consolidate my thoughts and have them have them come back and be provided to me in ways that I had never imagined before, which is not a bad thing. It's a good thing from a creative process. And I think you would agree with that as well, Ryan, when it comes to that type of thing. Just the pure language aspect of this and what it is that you're presenting to people for a clear understanding is right there, right in front of you.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely, couldn't agree more.
Patrick.
Ryan, I really applaud the university for taking a lead, not only for the integration for what it's, saving finite resources for the university that may be better deployed to continue to grow the university in terms of our research development and continuing to grow in providing the best education for the next generation. but also in providing those resources for online training. Um, I have been struck in my own conversations with Maine companies from Irving using these tools to identify what tree species is coming in the sawmill, hook aquaculture, identifying and monitoring salmon to see if they're healthy, if there's disease that is starting to take shape in the population. Life Flight of Maine has used it to optimize the stations of their helicopters and looking at fatalities and where they really should station their helicopters with limited uh, uh, operations. But what would you recommend for those listening that may have been overwhelmed by this? Conversation to where they can meet them where they are? Are there opportunities for the university that they can start their own AI integration to their operations?
Yeah, yeah, it can be an intimidating space again because it changes so fast. But one of the things that I always recommend when I start off a conversation in AI is just getting in there and exploring, just playing around and kind of understanding, what these tools do, getting in there and starting simple, having it help you maybe manage your email and your calendar is where you start. The other piece that I always recommend, again, because it's where 99% of my own AI knowledge comes from, is take a stroll around YouTube. Look, there are a million examples on YouTube of small businesses that are leveraging AI. There are a million influencers in that kind of small, medium business kind of space out there who are talking about how you can leverage these tools in a really small organization or in a large organization. And so, again, it goes back to that point that, I really learn best from these tools by seeing it. And so I'll spend a couple of hours each morning trying to understand what other folks are doing. And even if it's not a one for one, I'm rarely am I going to come across a vice chancellor of finance demo on YouTube. But what I might find is, somebody in the private sector who's in finance, who is leveraging these tools in accounting, and I'll be able to pick up something that I can share with my staff. And so, get out there, explore, take advantage of a training course. We offer training courses for as low as $25 for 2.5 hours of learning on any of these tools. And there are lots of other opportunities out there, and lots of great organizations across the state, I think, that can help out in this space. So just encourage folks to reach out.
Well,
Well,
you have my endorsement.
mm,
I've been a student
mm.
of yours on one of those classes. I found it extremely valuable. We at the chamber, every month we try to have a little bit of a set aside time where we illustrate how we've used the tools. We learn from each other on this and exploring it ourselves, but it really does take institutions like the university to kind of be that North Star to start the discussion internally, which really triggered it for the Maine State Chamber. Well, John, this has been fascinating.
Yeah,
I
sure has.
am so excited to see the university take a leadership role here, and it's going to be imperative for a lot of businesses to stay competitive to utilize these tools.
A great conversation, indeed, and thank you, Patrick. And by the way, Ryan, thank you so much for joining us today. And by the way, to be continued, right? We got we'll have you back so that we
Look
can
forward to it.
continue this conversation because it's only going to get better and grow, and there'll be much more information out there available. It happens almost every day, right?
Yes.
Absolutely. Well, listen, thank you again, my friend. And Patrick, thank you as well. And once again, everybody, I'm John Williams for Patrick Woodcock and Ryan Lowe. Stay tuned for our next edition of The Bottom Line coming up in just 2 weeks, reminding you that we are looking out for your business interests. So be safe, be healthy, and we'll see you again very, very soon. Bye bye.